So it happens. Well, it's great to meet you.
You too.
Thank you for taking a minute out. And I'd love to
Yeah.
begin our conversation before we get into your work, before we get into your life and all of the beauties and of HR being an expert. I want to know, how did you survive COVID? How did you get through that 4 year period, and how did it change the way that you do things now?
Yeah. So COVID was interesting. And at the time, I was embedded as an HR leader in an S&P 500 publicly traded company. And it was challenging, to say the least, right? It was navigating. At first, it was navigating all the parents whose schools had canceled and closed, right? So first it was parents, and then it was daycares, and then it was everybody wanted to go home because everybody was going to get sick and die. And so, at the company I was with, we pivoted very quickly. I mean, we had everybody home within 2 days, and everybody did pretty well from home. And then 6, 9 months into it, it's, are we going to mandate vaccines? Are we going to mandate return to work or to the office, right? And all of that was, unfortunately, very political, very sensitive. Everybody had opinions about it. And navigating all of those opinions and all of those conversations was draining at best. I mean, it was a 24/7 job for anyone working in HR. And I had facilities too. So I was kind of juggling both. I mean, there were both departments that were very affected by COVID. And we had to get different air conditioning filters and, all those things, right, that were related to COVID. And it was just super draining in HR. And I know I'm not alone in that. Most HR people really have felt a lot of burnout over the last, 4 years for sure.
Well, I would think too in HR, in my life of being in companies, the landscape of HR has changed because of the advent of cancel culture. There's so many things now with cameras on everybody, with these heightened levels of awareness, which are definitely needed. I mean, the Weinsteins and all these other things that have gone on for years and years unabated are not any good for anybody. But that would
Yeah.
have to create so many more levels of, I don't even know what the word would be, not even headaches, but just so many more obstacles in something that's already very rule and law bound.
I have never gotten out of bed to be a compliance person, but I do get out of bed and I am sensitive to humans and human issues and having empathy for, kind of what people's lived experiences are. And so kind of navigating that, but again, on top of the compliance stuff, right? Like I don't let many of my employers or my clients get into trouble with any of those sticky law things, but you add that to the sensitivities that are in the modern day employment world, and it does get really dicey. And I definitely, I work with small businesses now, and I don't want any of them doing that on their own because it can get really, really scary legally and from a PR perspective, since everybody is a billboard now on social media. So it's something that every business owner has to be take very seriously and understand the humans that are in their business and work with that. But I can't say it makes for less HR work for sure.
Yeah, right. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily
Yeah,
basis in 2024. I'm going to put you in
yeah,
front of a bunch of third graders at career day, and one of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer
yeah,
them?
yeah. I have kids, so I have answered that question. I basically I say I make work a better place to be.
Okay.
We all spend a ton of time at work. And if I'm going to get technical about it, I work with business owners to make it the best place to work for people to be. And so, we want everybody to be happy at work. We all spend a tremendous amount of time there. And I help businesses do that. Yes, I help people get paid and hired and all of those things too, but I want people to be happy at work.
So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
It's a great question. Honestly, I don't entirely remember what. I suspect probably a teacher.
Okay.
There's always been kind of an educator piece of me. My parents were both in healthcare, and I knew I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, although my mom was a therapist, and some people have called me the internal therapist being in HR. And so I do get some, tears and emotions and things in my office. And so some people are like, where's the couch? Right. But yeah, I definitely didn't want to go into healthcare. But I did really love the teaching world, and that's your exposure, in those early years. So
Yeah.
that was probably my pick.
So how did this happen? Take me back to where you were born and raised, and what was the evolution of getting to this point where you're in HR and this is your passion?
Yeah, it's really kind of funny story actually.
Yeah.
So I grew up in very northern New York, like hop, skip, and a jump from Montreal,
Okay.
Canada, right on the St. Lawrence River. My dad was a doctor, my mom was a therapist, and I had a pretty straight up public school education through junior year of high school. And then I got really sick of kind of high school and immaturity, and I felt like I wanted to take the leap to college early, which is what I did. I went to a school very close to home that was a STEM school, Clarkson University, for my first year. And then I knew I wanted to, well, I didn't know this at the time, but we had a really horrific ice storm. And up there, it gets really, really gnarly. And I called my parents and I was like, I need to transfer and I need to go someplace warm. And they said, so where do you want to go? And I said, I have a friend who's going to Tulane. Can I, and it's a good school, right? Let's go. And they were like, yeah, you don't belong in the French Quarter of New Orleans. I said, okay, so what's next? And I said, well, what about Rice? Great school, Houston, it's warm. Um, and they said, you're a small town girl. You're not going to Houston. Okay, fine. And I said, all right, parents, your pick. This is on you, right? It's two strikes and I'm out. So the third one's your pick. I
Yeah.
said, you tell me a school that's warm and I will go sight unseen. I don't care. And they said, well, in fifth grade, we went on a dude ranch vacation in Tucson, Arizona. How about U of A? And I said, fine. So I went 2,700 miles away, didn't know a soul, completely by myself. And I stayed there until I got my bachelor's, and definitely got my acclimation to Arizona at that time. But I started actually with a major of human resources management. My mom was a therapist. She was an EAP provider for a local plant. She was very close to the HR manager. And I went and shadowed him some while I was in high school to kind of find out what he did. And I was like, oh, HR might be something I'm really interested in. And so that was my first major. And then I went to a association conference. It's the largest HR association in the world. You will know which one it is. And I was the president-elect of the student chapter at U of A. And before your year of presidency, the president-elect goes to the national conference in, the big, huge, 200,000 people kind of conference. And I went to the conference and I was completely disenfranchised by everything HR. It was very box checking, very compliance, very black and white, rules driven, your typical connotation of HR, right?
Yeah.
And I knew that that was what I say is that that was not going to get me out of bed for the next 30 years of my career,
Yeah.
40 years. And I said, uh, heck no, I'm not going to do that. And I promptly, after the conference, I called a couple of people in the student chapter. I said, I'm not going to be president. Peace out. And I changed my major even. I don't even want this major. Like, I don't want anything to do with HR. And so I graduated with a degree in communication and a minor in Spanish, which are just pretty general things. And I knew that, communication is not going to hurt
Yeah.
as a major. And I knew I probably wanted to go to MBA school later anyway. And so I was like, yeah, whatever, it's a piece of paper. And my first job out of college was in executive recruiting. And so that kind of, I was like, unfortunately, I had some HR leaders that I were, people I reported to, but definitely mentors
Yeah.
that helped me see that fortunately they were very progressive thinking in HR,
Yeah.
and they were able to help me see the business strategy and human motivation and behavior and kind of get into that intersection of business and humans,
Yeah.
which is where I have kind of lived for the last almost 30 years.
Okay.
And that's what gets me out of bed. I don't get out of bed for the compliance. I get out of bed of helping businesses understand humans and helping humans understand business.
Do you still get a charge? Do you get to hire people, or are you a part of that process of
Yeah,
hiring them and seeing that
yeah,
sparkle? Is that a
yeah,
motivator?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Love recruiting.
yeah. I figure
Yeah.
that would be a
I'm
big
not a headhunter. I'm not a search consultant. I'm not a recruiting firm.
sure.
But I love being part of that process and
Yeah.
seeing how people fit for sure.
Yeah. So who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you?
Yeah. So I had a vice president of HR, the first the first company that I led people at. That he pretty much dealt with the executive team and the board of directors, and I kind of ran the HR world. And he's very much what I consider a business person in HR clothes. And that's kind of what I say about me too. He understood business and he was able to show me that correlation so clearly that we start with business strategy and then we can fit in all the other HR stuff. And to this day, I still have lunch with him and I still tell him that I would not be doing what I do, how I do it, or be successful without him.
So if you can meet anybody on the planet right now, whether it's in business or otherwise, that you find fascinating or that you could learn something from, who would you hang out with?
Probably Adam Grant.
Okay.
Adam Grant is I think, an industrial psychologist or organizational psychologist. He's at Wharton. And he is so much about human behavior. And I think that that's sometimes where we step in it in HR is that we don't understand human behavior and motivation. And a lot of HR people aren't interested in being business junkies either. And Adam so clearly sees the correlation between those two, and helping people be their best actually helps business to be their best. And he's just like, he put whatever he posts, I'm like all in.
Yeah. So in this career that you've had, has
Yeah.
there been a certain time period, a certain month or year or project or something that's happened that made you grow the most? It was difficult, but the ending was really good.
So my last role as an embedded HR leader, I would say was um, I learned that my version of HR is something missing and that it was worthwhile. And even though, in the big corporate world, it's easy to feel beat down when you are authentic and whether, and kind of doing things your way, you don't necessarily fit so well. And while, I got along with everybody and we did some amazing things, it was definitely a moment where I got really interested when it I was burnt out from COVID, right? And all of the big corporateness that it is, which is a lot of risk mitigation and legal kinds of things. Um, it got me down, right? I was starting to question, am I even good at this anymore? And what I realized is that, it's just that I'm not motivated by getting out of bed for compliance. I'm motivated by getting out of bed to connect business and humans.
Yeah.
And and so having gone through that, I had to come out on the other side and do what I do best and be authentically me. And, I'd like to say authentically Karen, but these days Karen doesn't go very well
Right.
in circles. And so I'm like I'm not that kind of
Yeah.
Karen.
Yeah.
But definitely, I felt this sense of it was almost just a really strong calling to do HR my way,
Yeah.
for gritty small businesses, trying to make a difference. And it really made me realize that small businesses have this opportunity in this anti-corporate kind of sentiment that there is right now, to be the heroes in employment.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I love kind of helping them see that because they often feel like the underdogs in the talent world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, 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 no. You have opportunity here.
Yeah. So the one thing about companies is that in most companies there's all these departments, and there's a lot of times that people don't experience all the departments or all the flavors that go into a company, but you
Yeah.
always experience HR
Yep.
first and foremost. It's like the bus
Yeah.
driver in the morning taking
Yeah.
the kids to school.
Sure.
What's one of the most common misperceptions, conceptions of HR that you would like to correct for people out there that are thinking about that word HR?
Yeah. Unfortunately, all HR leaders and professionals are not created equal, and we don't all have the same background experience and credentials or philosophy. And I think that philosophically is where we can be different. And for me, I want it to be the best place to work because I know from firsthand experience, you make it the best place to work, people genuinely feel that way. A, you have no problem recruiting. And B, if they don't want to lose their job and they really love what they're doing and the people that they're doing it for, then you get more out of it. Right. And so, like, I see that correlation. And so, I am all about employee experience. Right. I want employee candidates to feel that warmth, and I want employees to experience consistency and good culture, core values, all those things, all the way through. Good leadership is huge, right? People leave supervisors, not companies. And so, I think that um, there's huge opportunity for HR to manage that employee experience so people are actually really happy.
Yeah.
And that correlates to good business. People talk about people first, and I'm like, and so business owners are like, this people first thing. I'm like, no, you don't understand. People first is good business.
Yeah.
And so I think that that has been an area where HR has, you know, in a broad sense, missed the ball.
Yeah.
Um, and and I live to change that.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run
Yeah,
into that version of you that's leaving New York to come to Arizona for the first time, and you can give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained throughout all of these years. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
just be me.
Yeah.
It's enough and it works and you know what you're doing. It's really easy to slip into imposter syndrome, right? Especially when you're young.
Yeah.
And, it's all going to be okay. And you'll get to do this your way. And, and don't feel bad about being authentic or, kind of showing up in a way that aligns with your core values.
So of this career that you've had, everything that you've done and overcome and become at this point, what are you the proudest of?
Proud of what I'm doing now. I'm proud that I've landed doing something that I feel incredibly passionate about, and that I'm helping people who are incredibly passionate about their dreams too. I'm generally working with business owners who have companies less than 50 employees. They're gritty, they're underdogs, they have passion, they have visions, they have all of those things. And most of them are doing it incredibly authentically and with great integrity. And I get to do that too.
Yeah.
And that feels pretty awesome.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
A great question. And a little embarrassing too, but my perception is definitely authentic. I've been told that, there's a certain energy. I don't know what that is. It's just me being me, I guess. And I'm an optimist. I'm a little bit of a dreamer and a visionary myself. And I am driven beyond driven. And so people know not to get in my way because it's like I'm gonna, challenge me to fail, challenge me to fail. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And I, you know, s- I'm just very strong.
So if anyone wants to reach out, they want to learn
Mhm.
more, any of the good
Yeah.
business, where's the best place to go?
Yeah. So definitely humansmartsconsulting.com. And then on LinkedIn, Karen Evers, the last piece of the LinkedIn Earl is KL Evers is my user link on LinkedIn. And there's on LinkedIn, there's a place to book now. So it's usually just a 15-minute meet and greet if you want to pick my brain or, just see whether it makes sense to work together. Happy to do that too.
Okay, excellent. Karen, this has been wonderful. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for your time.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for your
Joe.
story.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.